So, welcome to the sustainable artist, Maren Costa.
It's so great to be here.
Oh my God, I'm so excited to have you for so many reasons. It's very apropos of you to be the first guest because you kind of launched me into this sphere. I don't know if I've said that directly or, specifically, but yeah, I wasn't thinking about this as much until I saw you on the Netflix documentary By Now, which we'll get into for sure. I started to do this work about a year ago. And before that, I was doing talent management for like 7 years. And then I decided I wanted to develop talent and become a coach. And so I started working on that. And at the same time, I had a PR background for many years before then. And I said, okay, I want to use my PR background. But if I'm going to use it, I'm going to do it with sustainable brands and like social impact leaders, basically. Voices that were changing the world. Mm-hmm. Enter Maren Costa. So a friend of mine, a great friend of mine said, you need to watch this documentary. It's right up the alley of what you're talking about. And so it was By Now, The Shopping Conspiracy on Netflix, which was top 10 in over 40 countries. It won an Emmy this year. And I saw this and you were one of the talking heads. But for those who have not seen By Now, The Shopping Conspiracy, which everyone needs to see it. This is one of those things that I was like, I won't shut up about until every last person I know watches it. Yeah. I sent a group text to my family literally after I saw it. This is a very important film. We all need to see it.
Yeah.
And this was my extended group family chat. So
yeah. I know.
That's how important it was. So, in your words, what is the film about, and why were you tapped to talk for the film? Just for anybody who hasn't seen it.
The film is about overconsumption, and how it has just been increasing. Like we are buying so much more than we used to. It's like your e-commerce was supposed to be greener than regular commerce at first. Mm-hmm. That was the story we were telling ourselves. And then, but what it ended up doing was making it so easy. And I'm part of this problem. I was part of the problem at Amazon, making it so easy for you to buy whatever you wanted the second you thought that you wanted it. And we used to literally say, we want to be there at your next shoppable moment. Like we want Amazon to be the first thought in your head when you think of something you want to buy, and we want it to be one tap away. Just reduce the friction between you and that thing you wanted. And so now people are getting one item in a plastic mailer 3 times a day, and multiple trucks are running down, your streets. They don't have it organized where it's actually like one truck is doing all the driving that 40 people would have had to do, Right. Plus, you don't go to the store for one item. You wait till you want to get 40 items, and then you go to the store. So, the film captured all of that, and then it talked about where is all this stuff going? Like we in the global north live blissfully separated,
and ignorant.
What's that?
And ignorant.
And ignorant of the damage that we're doing, and how it's already seriously negatively impacting so many people's lives and the planet, and it will impact us eventually. It's just going to take longer to get here, but we cannot keep consuming the way that we're consuming and live sustainably. That's just not. It's not possible. Nature doesn't act that way. Nature doesn't just grow and grow and grow and grow and grow and grow and consume and consume and consume. It's like there was the saying, like anything that grows forever is a cancer.
Yeah.
Or a pathogen.
Absolutely.
And that's what we are on the planet right now.
Right.
And we can't keep doing that. We're just simply bumping up against the physical limits of our planet.
Right.
Yes.
Shout out to Grade Media, who's amazing. And as I said earlier, won an Emmy for this
filmmakers were amazing. Yeah. I love that they wanted to make that movie, know?
Yeah. And so they chose you because you worked at Amazon for 15 years.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your history with Amazon. You were creating this system, as you said. You had like 16 patents or something.
Yes.
She
Not a
sighs in
proud
regret.
moment. I know, right? It's like, oh my God.
Mhm.
I was a graphic designer,
Mhm.
and I started at Amazon in 2002 when literally the web was like, the interactivity of the web was blue links. That's it. There was no sliders. There was no, you know, drag and drop or I mean on the web. You know, it was just everything was just blue links, and so there was no such thing as a UX designer, or a user experience designer, or interaction designer, or whatever. So as a graphic designer, I just started. There was about 3,000 people at the company at that point. You know, I was in meetings with Jeff Bezos and 5 other people. You know, it was just small. It was a small company, and it was a big, you know, a big risk. We all grew up and learned how to do interaction design as the web grew and grew, and the, you know, shopping online there used to be so much harder. You know, like you had to go through so many steps, and you maybe have to enter your credit card every time, and you know, it was just like so many things that we take for granted now. And then it was also really the introduction of personalization. Amazon did this really well and kind of did it first, where it's tracking what you're buying and then suggesting more stuff. And so you're just constantly, like, we actually called that the screen that you know, after you put something in your cart, then it shows you more stuff.
Right.
Like you do want to buy more, and we called that, it was called the high upsell cart. Like it's just get you to buy more stuff. It's like a supermarket where, you know, there, when you get to the checkout, there's all those little things that you can just impulse buy, you know, since you're there anyways. But the difference between Amazon and a supermarket is Amazon was in your pocket.
Right.
You know, with the you know, onset of the iPhone, and now it's just there's just no barrier to buying.
Yeah.
And that was what Jeff Bezos intended from the beginning.
Yeah.
Was to have, like, he wanted basically a conveyor belt right to the customer's home. Just like you don't, you know, just like there's nothing stopping. You know, it just goes straight.
Yeah. It's interesting because we're filming this during the holidays, and I think about the holidays now so differently because kids don't have, I don't know, I think the appreciation of what it was to receive a gift at the end of the year or for their birthday, because you're literally constantly shopping all year long, and it's so easy.
Yeah.
It doesn't require much thought, like, you know, so yeah, it changed everything. You know, some might argue for the better, but I think we're here saying that we need to reevaluate that, right? For those who don't know what a principal user experience designer is, can you just tell them real quick?
Yeah, it's like, you know, anything that has an interface, like Amazon has a user interface. And as a user experience designer, you're designing that interface, and you have to understand how users think, how they perceive things, what colors, you know, work best, how does, you know, size versus, you know, contrast versus all the rules of design, the regular rules of design, proximity, you know, and making sure that it's usable. So if you're tapping with a mouse, it's one thing, but if you're tapping with your finger on a screen, it's another thing. I loved it. I loved that job. It was a great, words matter so much. Like, you have to know how to use language. That's underestimated. You know, you can't just be a visual designer. You really have to know how to communicate. And so it was like, I'm a generalist, and it was just like this great combination of like psychology, technology, art. You know, it was just like it worked my brain in the way that I constantly want to work my brain.
So you didn't go in there, you know, because we kind of teased it a little bit that you do get fired. And a lot of people might know your story already, but there's a lot, and I'm sure certainly my new viewers might not know. So, but you went in there not as a whistleblower. You went in there for kind of as a designer, kind of looking for something new, or
I mean, I kind of went in thinking, because I had started my own nonprofit, and I was fighting for women and girls, because, you know, when you invest in women and girls, you get all of the benefits. Like, it's like the best thing you can you know, build up women and girls.
Yeah.
The world, everything benefits.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to Amazon thinking I'm going to go inside the belly of the beast. I had a friend that was working there, and she was like, "You should come and work here. You would love it." And I was thinking, I will hate it because I am so non-corporate and like, you know, this making money and selling and you know.
Yeah.
But I thought I'll go in and learn how they work so that when I get on the outside, I can better, you know, understand the enemy. And then I got in there and I actually really loved it. And I started to think, how could I use the engine of this big corporation, because it got big fast,
Mm-hmm.
to do good in the world? I had been doing this little nonprofit, and it's so hard. You don't have any resources. You're just constantly struggling for, you know, funding, and there's no reach.
Right.
Nobody knows who you are. Now here's Amazon. Everybody knows. It's a global stage. If you could make change there, it could have global impact.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started to think about how I could change Amazon for the better.
And that's when you brought up some of this waste that we saw in the documentary to Jeff Bezos.
Yes.
And what happened?
I had been really successful at Amazon, and it was always like you could, you know, if you pitched an idea to Jeff and you said, "This is how it will benefit customers, this is how it will benefit the business," you know, and then he would be like, "That's great, let's do it. Here's the team, here's the resources, go."
Game.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and so I thought, okay, I've been successful doing that. I want to pitch an idea of how Amazon should become more sustainable.
Right.
Like, how can we reveal more to customers the externalized costs of their purchases, of how far is it coming from, how far is it being shipped from, you know, is it like what are the materials, is it polyester, you know, is it made from fossil fuels, you know, all these things. And I pitched the idea, and it was sort of like crickets, you know, and then I was trying to make this customer argument that customers are going to realize someday how much damage they've unwittingly been doing by buying the way that we are encouraging people to buy. And they're going to be pissed off. They're going to feel like, Amazon, you should have told me that how much damage this was doing.
Right.
And customer trust was one of the most valuable things. You know, Jeff would say that it's the easiest, hardest thing to build and the easiest thing to break. And so I thought that might work. That argument might work, but I was just still so naive. And then I realized that if you aren't pitching an idea that benefits short-term profit, like, which some of them I did. Like, I did a lot of, like, making Amazon more inclusive, making it more usable, making it, you know, more feminine, because it was such the male geek, like, you know, they didn't even see how off-putting it was to regular people. And so I had made good changes. And then I just realized, though, that the only reason why I got the green light on those things was because they were pretty sure it was going to increase, you know, short-term profits.
And so do you think the reason they didn't even want to touch your proposal, I think you mentioned in another interview that it was like a hot potato. Like,
yeah. Yes.
Not touching this.
Yeah. Because I pitched it to multiple VPs and Jeff, and it was just like everybody was like, I could tell climate was like a political issue. It was like, yep, they didn't want to talk about it. It's like they know it's not going to fly. They don't want to be the VP that's pushing this thing because they'll probably lose their job.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, so it's not apathy. It wasn't lack of understanding or desire. Or is it, maybe it's because I've thought about this. Like, is it because they maybe knew that it could open a can of worms to other injustices or things that were happening in the company, and then you have to address those too? Or like, you know, I'm just trying to understand, because it's like,
I think they just knew that it was going to cost money.
Yeah.
It wasn't going to make money. It was going to cost money. And they didn't want to be the one trying to convince Jeff to do something that would lose money.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's
and some of them, like, I could tell some of the VPs were like, in their private life, they got it.
Right.
They knew about climate change. They didn't think it was a hoax, you know. And some of them were just like, they're from Wall Street or whatever. They really don't care. They don't think it's a big deal, and they don't care.
Right.
But even the ones that I knew cared would not take me up on the idea.
Yeah.
Or any of the ideas that, you know.
Well, let's talk about collective action, because this is when you got mad, big mad. This is when you were like, this conversation isn't going to work. And this is the meat and potatoes of what I really want our viewers to walk away with too. Obviously, we need to understand the story, but what they can do, how they can take steps, you know, to creating a future that we can all live and thrive in and be sustainable in, right? So you founded Amazon Employees for Climate Justice.
Yep.
And so
Co-founded.
Yep. You co-founded. So what happened with that?
People, like, somehow a group of people, we found each other. You know, I had been trying to get my coworkers to do something with me, and nobody were like, oh, well, have a after hours climate conversation. And it's like, that's not impactful. Or we'll get paper cups in the micro kitchens. You know, it's like, no, that's not what I'm talking about. Like,
yeah.
And then I found this like group of 5 people who had already written a shareholder resolution, and this was, you know, an intentional vehicle to push for change. This one was about climate and how Amazon was, at that time, they didn't have any climate goals. They were far behind their peers. They got an F on every rating scale that was, you know, about how sustainable a company is. And so I found these guys, and I'm like, oh my God, I was like feeling some serious climate depression, because I felt so helpless, you know, like that's not a good feeling. It was when you're trying and you can't make any progress. But joining together, and I signed on to the shareholder resolution right before it, you know, we had to send it off. Yeah. And that was like December of 2018. And then by February of 2019, we had more formalized. We came up with a name, you know. I designed the logo, you know, because I'm a designer, you know. And we just became a real thing. And then the shareholder meeting, the annual shareholder meeting, is in May. So from between February and May, we started planning what we were going to do, what collective action we were going to do to raise awareness and bring attention, because the media is always there at those annual meetings. And so you get like free media coverage. And then that's when it really took off. We all showed up in white t-shirts, Amazon badges. A group of people were inside. Emily Cunningham, who also got fired with me, stood up and you get 2 minutes to speak. She tried to call Jeff out on stage. She's like, I know you're here. Come on out. Like, we want you to hear this. And then she started talking about what the resolution was, like how you don't have any climate goals. You're using AI even already to help oil companies dig up more oil more quickly. You know, all the things. There's so many. There's like 5 demands that the shareholder resolution called out. And she said at one point, you know, anyone who agrees is like, stand up with me. And like almost everybody stood up. Like, it was not just the people the Amazon employees who were part of Amazon Employees for Climate Justice. It was like the whole.
How many people are we talking?
Like hundreds of
people.
You know, yeah. And that was an amazing moment. And then we also had people speaking outside, and the press picked it up. And ever since then, you know, Amazon will say it's bullshit spin, and the press will say, well, you know, Amazon is doing this, and they say they're doing this, but their employees say, and then we would have this counterpoint in every press thing, and that was so powerful, because now we're changing the narrative. Now we are rewriting the narrative, and they can't just get away with their greenwashing and their spin and their bullshit, you know?
Right.
So that's really powerful too. But it took all of that. Like, people are afraid to speak to the press. I wasn't. I was ready. Like, go ahead, fire me, you know? Like, but obviously I knew I could have more power as long as I could stay there. So I wasn't like actively trying to get fired.
Yeah.
But, you know, to have real Amazon employees with their name quoted in the press is really powerful. And if we had enough people that we had brought together where there's safety in numbers.
Right. And speaking of safety in numbers, so you had this huge walkout.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Strike. It was was it a day long thing?
There was a global climate strike.
Yeah.
On like October 19th of 2019. And so it was kind of that youth-led movement. Like Greta Thunberg was, you know, kind of one of the main organizers of it. We knew that I would either get warned or get fired, and same with Emily, who had also spoken along the route of the march.
Yeah.
And yeah, we had organized. In fact, we put out month before. We put out we put out an alert or a press release that said we've organized 1,700 people to walk out, and that was when I think they really started to scramble because we were making them look bad.
Right.
And so the night before the climate strike, Jeff Bezos announced the Amazon's climate pledge.
Okay. So you guys planned this, you threatened this walkout. Yeah. It ended up being about 4,000.
Like 3,000.
Or 3,000
and around
Amazon
the world,
employees.
like from people all over the world.
Has something that big happened since, by the way? Like,
I think that's the largest strike walkout of, you know, there's been tons of tech advocacy for, you know, obviously like Palestine and, you know, like No Tech for War, NOTA, you know, like all of these groups that have been super powerful. But I think that was the largest walkout.
The largest walkout.
Yeah.
And so at that point, then you have Amazon then say, okay, we will do this $10 billion.
Well, that came right after. Their climate pledge was like, we're going to set goals to be, you know, net neutral by 2040. We're going to do, you know, it was all those typical climate goals that companies have now. And then the 10 billion Bezos Earth Fund came right after that. And I think we pressured both of those things to happen, you know.
Right.
And we could tell he was using our language when he announced the climate pledge because I knew that Jeff Bezos does not want to be. He wanted always Amazon to be a leader.
Yeah.
And so I was saying, what's up, Amazon? Like, why aren't you leading? I'm used to working at a company that is leading. We're not even in the middle of the pack. We're like, you know, we're bringing up the rear, you know, and just pressuring them that way. And he always says day one, like it has to be day one. Every day is day one. And I was like, this is so day two, you know, and just like doing all the things that you can do to poke the you know, the soft spot and get a reaction. And so, yeah, we felt like we were definitely part of those things happening.
And so now this pledge is made. Now everyone knows, they're exposed, you know, so this commitment is made. This fund is created. What from that fund were positive changes, and what are things that are still like we have not changed at all?
That's such a good question. Because it's hard to tell with all of the spin. And now, of course, you know, with our new regime, you know, big tech is getting more of what it wants. You know, they would always say, I'm pushing them on regulation too for AI. And they would say, like, well, we're not in the business of regulation. That's the government's job. Well, they would then go actively lobby the government to not put regulations on tech. And now we see they're all removed. So it's like, and then they put out their sustainability report. And if you only read that, you would think that Amazon was crushing it. And so that's now what an important role that AECJ still plays is we do our own research. We dig into the numbers. We dig into what their claims are and what's really happening, and then we can write our own. We wrote the group. We have people who are specifically working on it, but we called it the Amazon Unsustainability Report. And so reading those two together gives a little bit more of the full picture.
Right.
They definitely stepped up their game. Like, for example, they at the time pledged to, in part of the climate pledge was to buy 100,000 electric vans. And that was before, this was quite a while ago when electric cars weren't even that popular, and especially vans. I think they've still only bought 10,000, but that's more than they had before, you know? And they also are, as they will say, one of the largest consumers of renewable energy, which is in many ways true. And, but it doesn't cover it doesn't cover the damage they're doing, you know?
Right.
But then they'll also mess with things like to buy carbon credits. And there's no proof. Carbon credits have just been a not very well proven source of, like, you're not actually pulling carbon out of the air.
Right.
And you don't know where they're going and who, did they cut down a forest and then plant a new forest with a single monoculture and say we just planted 100 trees? It's like you don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
And so that's how they're making themselves sound really great right now.
Well,
and then they'll actually go. They were lobbying the SBTI. I mean, I always get that, but it's the standards of what you have to, like, in order to say that you're net neutral. Who keeps those standards? And they were trying to pressure them and get them to drop their standards.
Yeah.
It's just they're just evil.
No. I hear that there were some changes.
Yes.
Obviously still a long ways to go, but
And
how
we're
amazing
fighting.
that your collective action, was able to push that. What happened in 2020?
In 2020, it was right at the beginning of COVID, and we were hearing from Amazon warehouse workers that they were not at all safe in the warehouses. You couldn't, for example, take a day off without showing a positive COVID test. And at that time, it took a week to get a test and another week to get your results back. So people were going to work. You can't afford to take 2 weeks off when you're making the Amazon warehouse wage. And you'd be standing on the line, and the next day, someone who had been sneezing, now they're gone, and you don't know, have you been exposed? And then they'd be doing these 6-foot distancing thing, and when the packages coming down too fast, the manager would just drop the 6-foot stick that they were walking around and just jump in, and everyone would crowd in. I mean, and then the break rooms were just, there no distancing. They would take out sinks, like every other sink, so that people would be washing their hands further apart. But then it would start these long lines of people standing closer together, waiting to get to the sink, And so it's just like, and they knew that was going to happen. You're trying to roll out new SOPs, standard operating procedures, across a global network of fulfillment centers pretty much overnight.
Right.
They knew that it was going to have bumps in the road, and those bumps they were perfectly happy to be actual people, like dying.
Right.
And so we decided we should set up, and of course inside Amazon, in the corporate Amazon, the story was everything's going perfectly. These are our heroes. And also to the public, everything's going great. These are frontline workers, and we're treating them so well. And, and then we're hearing this completely opposite story. So we say, okay, let's do a town hall and have a virtual town hall and bring warehouse workers together with corporate workers so that the warehouse workers can tell the corporate workers what it's actually like in the warehouses in the middle of COVID or at the beginning of COVID.
Right.
And so we set up that town hall. We sent out the invitation, and within minutes, Amazon, pulled that email out of everybody's inboxes, pulled the event off people's calendars, and fired me and Emily Cunningham, even though we hadn't done anything wrong. And so that's why it was such an open and closed case, because really you're firing these two people who never had work, never had bad performance reviews or anything within minutes of this, this meeting going out. And that's because that's what they fear most.
Yeah.
Is people coming together, because that's where we have power.
Yeah. So, but you knew this was possibly coming.
Yes.
And you put yourself in the front line precisely because you knew you had, you've worked in tech for 15 years. You had stable salary. You had privilege, basically, as, a white woman. You said, I'm very aware that I'm pushing the edges right now, but I'm going to put myself in the front line, and
because
they
I
can.
Can.
Yeah, because
like
you
warehouse
can.
workers can't, I can, and I had kids. It was like you're going to do anything for your kids,
right.
So yeah, I knew that the risk was very high.
Yeah, and you were like, I'm going to handle this hit. I'm going to take the hit.
And I also knew that since I had been there so long and I was high ranking, well known at the company, I knew if I got fired, it would be a story that Amazon wouldn't want to be told, but it would get told, and it did.
And it did, and it was there was an open letter that came from 9 U.S. senators.
Yes.
Wrote an open letter to Jeff Bezos saying,
the Amazon board.
No.
Yep.
We don't do this. This is wrong.
Yep.
And it included Bernie Sanders and
Harris
Senator
at the time,
Warren.
Senator Harris.
Senator Harris. And so that was what then helped you win a landmark settlement. Because then did you sue Amazon, or
the National Labor Relations Board sued Amazon on our behalf, took Amazon to court on our behalf.
Yeah.
Which is what we filed an unfair labor practice. That's what you do if you feel like you've been fired, wrongly fired. And that goes to the National Labor Relations Board. They review it. If they think you have a case, they say, yes, we'll put lawyers on this. They'll do the whole deposition and whatever they call that, research that they do beforehand. I can't think of the word, but discovery.
Okay.
Discovery. They'll do all the discovery. And then we also had a lawyer who's one of the best labor law lawyers. She's here in New York. She was amazing, and she was working with us to, National Labor Relations Board wouldn't settle. They would take Amazon to court without, there would be no settlement. And we wanted, in some ways, we were ready, let's go to court. But then we also felt like this is going to take 5 years. Amazon's going to repeal and repeal and repeal. It's just, we wanted to be able to get back out there fighting the fight.
Yeah.
And so we opted at the end of it to settle, and that's what the other lawyer helped us with.
And you did, and it was a landmark settlement, and it changed labor laws, and it did a lot of damage.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of damage. When we were always at Amazon, we would always think, before we would launch a product, we would go through the exercise of what's the worst headline you could imagine seeing about this product, and that they were thinking that. I'm sure they were thinking, what's the worst headline we're going to see if we fire Mark? Because everybody knew me, it was just and they got some bad headlines.
Yeah. But I guess, we do want to give people hope, but I want to give them understanding first of what's happening. What is it that people aren't understanding about climate justice. And justice, by the way, we didn't talk about that specifically,
Mhm.
but that was a very intentional
Mm-hmm.
word
Yep.
that was used, and that wasn't climate change,
Yep.
climate restoration. It was about climate justice specifically. So
Mhm.
you can speak to that, and politics and inequality and work opportunity
Mm-hmm.
and feminism
Mhm.
and patriarchy and all these things. What are people not understanding about all of those issues?
Mm-hmm. Another great question. First off, all of the issues are connected. When you're fighting for, human rights, or you're fighting for climate, or whatever you're fighting against AI, we're fighting the same battle against the same systems and people who are benefiting from those systems.
Who are those people?
Billionaires, multi-billionaires. Like, I don't even care if you have a billion. Great. Have a couple billion. You don't need 400 billion or moving up on a trillion. Elon Musk will be shortly. This is just, it's absolutely asinine. There's no possible way to let some people get that rich and not. They are hoarding resources. It's like that somebody said, like, if there was one monkey hoarding all of the bananas and not letting anyone else, like, you're starving, but they have all, we would isolate that monkey and study it, because it would be such a horrid, psychotic anomaly, and that's what these billionaires are becoming.
Yeah.
It's just, they don't care. And I saw that working so closely with Jeff Bezos. I saw how they think about things. And to them, all the rest of us are just a waste of resources. We're breathing their air. We're using up their water. There was that email that came out with the Jeffrey Epstein, and it wasn't about the victims or the sex trafficking or anything. It was just one of those high up, part of that cabal of billionaires protecting each other, looking out for each other, and one of them was saying to Jeffrey Epstein, maybe climate change is a good thing because it will kill a couple billion people. Like, that's how they think.
Yeah.
Like, people don't understand. These guys are psychotic.
Yeah. So when we're talking about, smooth transition to the next point. No, it's wild to think about. Yeah, and I think most people, what they don't see is that kind of, we have a culture that aspires to be that, when that is so, it's self-destructive and it's destructive to the planet. So you have everyone kind of striving for more and more and more.
Yes.
Yet it's going in the wrong direction.
Yes.
Right?
Like, we shouldn't call them the richest men. We should call them the sickest men or the greediest men. These should not. That is culture, and we know that you have to change culture first before you can change policy. And the fact that we have this billionaire worship is, we have to stop doing that.
Yeah. So, I've heard you say this before. So essentially, if you're fighting for, equal rights, if you're fighting for prison reform, if you're fighting for clean water, clean oceans, animal rights, all of these things, really, when you start kind of unpeeling that, onion, when you start to unravel that, you're really kind of going to get down to a few men who have a lot of power and are imposing
this massive concentration of power.
Yeah.
And especially now with, big oil always needed big tech to dig up more oil. And now big tech needs big oil to power their data centers. Where they were actually bringing coal plants back online to power AI. It's like, and then we see big tech buy our federal government, essentially. So that is so much power in the hands of such a few number of people.
Yeah.
And the reason they have so much power is because the underlying systems that our world is running on globally, patriarchy, white supremacy, capitalism, neoliberal capitalism, colonialism, and climate is not an ecological issue. You can't talk about climate change without talking about colonialism. Like, they are absolutely connected. All of this stuff is like, these systems are underpinning the way the world works, and it's very clear who is benefiting from these systems and who wants to keep it status quo.
I really think a big part of this, of the climate issue, is branding, because people hear climate and they don't think it's like people.
Yeah.
Like, they just think it's like,
save the polar bears.
Yeah, or it's something like away from them. Like, it doesn't feel immediate enough,
Yep.
or like affecting my body,
Yes.
enough. And
It's a public health issue.
it's a public health issue. It's not. Climate is really talking about the survival of all living things.
Yes.
Like, I honestly, I'm gonna start a rally to change the name,
Yeah.
because I just think that
Yeah.
it's actually it's hindering.
Yes.
And you speak about justice specifically. We touched on
climate
that.
justice. Yeah.
Why justice? Why the word justice and not change or something?
Because so first of all, climate is not an ecological issue. It's an issue that stems from the same thing that all the other problems stem from, is these systems of domination. Patriarchy, white supremacy, we talked about. And so, saying climate is just such a limiting view on what it is. And then justice is because climate is going to affect the whole planet, but not equally. It is already has massively unequal impact on people's lives. Like, the global South is far more impacted than the global North. Low-income communities are going to be more impacted. Amazon intentionally places its dirtiest warehouses in low-income communities, and then they pollute everywhere, and all the kids have asthma. There's environmental racism that happens. We did a shareholder resolution on environmental racism. It is not going to impact people in a just way. And the billionaires are building their bunkers, so they don't even care if they destroy the atmosphere,
Yeah, this is news all over that this is happening.
Yeah.
This is not,
Yep.
hearsay.
Yeah.
So you recently sent a letter. You're still part of
AECJ.
AECJ, Amazon Employees for Climate Justice. You serve on the board?
Yep.
Okay. So you're on the board, super heavily involved still.
Because the work they're doing is so important.
Yeah. And you guys, this was recently in the news. There was a letter put out to the new CEO of Amazon saying, y'all are building AI far too fast. Slow down. What's up?
Yep.
So tell me a little bit more about that letter. And did it make a dent? What happened?
I mean, it definitely got a lot of press. But what we had to do was organize, again, enough people so that everyone had safety in numbers. And so what we do is we set a threshold and say, we will not publish anyone's names until we have 1,000 signatures on this letter. Right. And so that everyone knows they won't, be revealed. And so then it's like, okay, Amazon, you're going to fire all 1,000 of these people, No, but even now, the atmosphere in big tech is people just feel like they have targets on their backs. I mean, I think we all feel like that. We all feel like we're going to lose our jobs because people are losing jobs. And so it's harder to get people to take risks.
And it's moving so quick. And it's such a big wave. And it's like, I think you've said this before. It's like this huge arms race. And
AI is an arms race. Yep, I know. People keep saying the bubble's going to burst. And it's like, they are going to build it no matter what. Yeah. They are not going to stop. Market forces will not control AI.
So we're a little far gone in that. AI specifically, right? We're on the ship, right? Do you think like I want your opinion. Like, do you think AI is a bad thing and just shouldn't exist, period?
No, I think AI is a tool, like any tool humans have ever built. And it has as much potential for good as it does for bad. It will depend on who's wielding the weapon. And right now, we know who's wielding the weapon. It is the billionaires, and they aren't interested. Their values do not line up with mine. You know, if all your values line up with Elon and Jeff and Trump, yay! Don't be worried. They got you. But if they don't, we better think of another plan. And that's where the collective action really needs to come in.
Right, because then now we're talking about globally, we need to all assess what's happening here, right, and make new choices. So how do you do that?
Well, organizing is an actual skill you can learn, and it's a very powerful skill. So we have seen powerful collective action, nonviolent collective action movements, whether it was the Gandhi Salt March or civil rights here in the States or women's right to vote. You know, there's many instances of when enough people get together and demand change, change happens. And in fact, there's a woman at Harvard who studies has studied. They were actually in the military and came out of the military thinking that the most powerful force for change is war. And someone said to them, "Why don't you prove that?" And so they went back and looked at every conflict that has ever happened in the past, armed or unarmed, in the past 100 years, and found out that not only is collective action twice as powerful as war, it only takes 3.5% of a population to be actively engaged, after which point transformative change has never ceased to follow. Now, there's a couple anomalies there, like Arab Springs was 6%, didn't achieve the goals. You know, so it's a major tipping point in the data. Like there's something big happens at 3.5, you know, and that's amazing. And that is such a message of hope. Like people think, okay, that sounds doable. We can do that, you know, and I think it's our best hope. It's our biggest strength. It's their biggest fear. Yeah. Which is why they're constantly trying to divide and conquer. I mean, that's rule number 1 in the power playbook. Yeah. Divide and conquer. We're so much easier to beat when we're fighting amongst ourselves, and you know.
Yeah. And I think sometimes people think it's easier to handle petty disagreements between each other. I mean, sometimes it's not petty. Sometimes these are very real issues that we face among our communities, but then to tackle the big problems, right? Like then to tackle these huge issues, because it feels overwhelming. It feels impossible. It feels, you know, like we're never going to win. This is always going to go in this direction. Yet we have seen over time, you know, with really, really big issues, things can, and especially now we're connected more than we've ever been. And it's just about using that connected but
divided, right? I know they're
right,
social media is like intentionally polarizing us everywhere, which is insane.
Yes.
But yeah, we have the option to be globally, so easily globally connected.
Yes. And find your community. Find the people that, you know, do think like you. The others will catch up. So what was I gonna say? I want you to define, you know, or actually here, I'll ask this question first. What is it to create pro-human, pro-planet policies, and what gives you hope right now to do that?
What gives me hope is that we know what we need to do. There are any number of policies already written that would almost instantly, you know, not fix the problem. We have a long ways to go, but start moving us in the right direction. I mean, we're just moving in the completely wrong direction. And we know what we need to do. We have all of the data, all of the scientific research, all of the technology, all of the policies that we could put in place right away if our leaders had a global mandate to make those changes.
Right.
So we just need to do it.
Yeah.
It's like people say we're just missing political will. Well, what is political will but people coming
will.
together and demanding something different?
Just like you did at Amazon when you were there.
Yep.
How would you define a sustainable artist?
Oh, wow. Well, I think you have to put sustainability, or this, what I would say, the fight for a pro-human, pro-planet world at the center of what you do.
Mm-hmm.
That has to come through in everything you do.
Mm-hmm.
It comes through in the clothes you wear when you show up to do whatever you do. It comes
Mm-hmm.
through in how bravely and boldly you use your platform to speak about the things that need to be spoken about. Like, we all need to figure out what is our biggest lever based on our skill set or our privilege or our audience that we have built or our followers. Like, use that to spread the word and to organize people to get together, to fight together before it's too late.
Is that the same message you would send to your former colleagues, tech workers?
Yeah.
Tech workers have we could have another podcast simply about tech workers and how they operate and all this, but designers, innovators, like, what do you tell them now,
I mean, it's really, I'm usually saying, as you know, can I say the F word?
You can say the F word. I'm going to be cursing a lot.
Okay, good. I'm saying, like, I feel like I say 10 times a day, wake the fuck up. Like, we have to, awareness raising is the first thing that we have to do.
Mm-hmm.
Once people are really aware of how urgent, if we keep pretending that it's not this bad, and like, oh, you don't want to depress people, so don't speak truthfully about how bad it is. It's like, no, we got to man up or woman up, or whatever up,
Mm-hmm.
and face how bad it is, because if we don't, we won't respond with the urgency and the scale that is needed to actually address the crisis, the poly crisis, the meta crisis, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
So awareness raising is a good start.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I would say to anyone, I don't care what business you're in, we have to start organizing.
Mm-hmm.
We will only have enough power to go up against this massive concentration of power if we get organized and start standing together and build solidarity and say, I want to breathe clean air. I want my kids to breathe clean air.
Mm-hmm.
I want to drink clean water. Like, we have so much more in common. They're constantly trying to make us feel like we don't have anything in common. It's like, wait a minute, let's talk. We have so much in common. We all want good, nutritious food to eat. We all want to keep our loved ones safe. We all want education, opportunities for education and healthcare.
Right.
Like, these things are winning policies no matter where you are on the planet.
Exactly.
And we're being literally prevented from doing what we know we need to do.
Yeah. I love that you talk about getting angry, because it was so funny yesterday. Not funny, but one of my favorite morning show hosts were canceled, essentially. And I was DMing with someone, and I was like, and this is this is someone who's just venting too, but there was a slight sad instead of anger. And I'm like, well, I'm angry. Like, you know what I mean? And because getting angry actually pushes you to more action.
Yep. And it minimizes fear.
So I do agree. I think there's time to grieve and mourn things.
Mm-hmm.
I totally, I think we need to kind of do both. There's a lot of things that we're doing simultaneously right now. We have to kind of grieve the past, learn how to organize, get mad about do all these things. There's a lot of steps which could seem overwhelming, but I think if we can work collectively and we can just not, pretend that it's not happening.
Yeah.
Not just say, well, it's not happening, because ultimately we're going to be the ones paying for it at the end of it. So
unless
our
you have
family
$1 billion
suffers.
bunker.
I mean, we see what happened in Jamaica as well.
Yes.
These are the people that are getting affected. So anyways, but tell me what's to come Maren, what are you working on right now? And then I have one last exercise that I hope you're going to do with me before we wrap. So, like, what are you working on now?
I'm working on several different projects, and they all work towards this supporting and spreading this main message, which is that we have to get organized globally. These are global crises. We need global solutions. And the billionaires and the people in power are thinking globally. We need to think globally as well. And we need that level of power to make the systems change that we desperately need.
Yeah.
So I will be devoting my life to that mission for the rest of my life.
And if people want to kind of join in on the movement, can they just go to your website?
They can go to marencosta.com right now. There might be other websites in the future.
Okay, cool. All right, so this will be the last thing to close out that I think I want to incorporate in all of the podcasts. Let's see if it works. I don't know. So I want to do a portion where we envision the future together, the future that we want to create, the future that we see is possible. I'll put my coaching hat on now and say, obviously, manifestation is, starts with a vision. So I want to invite the audience, and I'm going to do this with you too, to close their eyes and just listen for like a minute of what you believe a future, that's possible, that's equitable, could look like. What does that look like?
A beautiful future is, imagine having guaranteed housing for everyone. Imagine having guaranteed health care for everyone. Imagine circular business models, circular businesses, circular, so that we're returning to the earth. We are taking no more than the earth has to give, and we return it to the earth to make sure we are always living within our planetary boundaries, which then makes beautiful clean air, clean water, nutritious food that is not grown in a mono, culture. It's grown in this, the way food is meant to be grown in, without pesticides and in small batches and not shipped all over the world, but just local farmers markets. And then imagine communities of care where we work together to support whatever region we're living in. We work together to make sure we're living in a circular way. Like, we are not taxing our environment any more than the environment can deliver. And we work together to do that. We share the resources. We share the common spaces. And everyone's so much happier.
Love that. I love that. I think that's a great note to end on. That was a beautiful vision to paint. Thank you for playing the game. Thank you for playing the manifestation game.
Yes.
We could all use a little bit of that now. So we'll leave it on that note. Maren, thank you. Thank you for being the first guest on this podcast. And maybe once you have those projects up, you can come back.
Yes. I feel so honored to be here, and I'm so excited to see what you do with this, because it's going to be awesome.
Thank you. All right. That's the Sustainable Artist. Ciao.